Hello class. In this video I'm going to walk you through the assignment for the midterm exam for the ethics class. I will make a folder on D2L where you can turn it in later this week, but for now you have the document that I will share with you in an email and in the announcements on D2L and this video. Okay, so here is the midterm. Notice first that it is due online by Sunday, March 31st. You can submit it before then, but that is the due date. It's a short answer, open book exam. That's the format. You will choose 8 questions to respond to out of a total of 15, so you can skip 7. You will choose 8 questions and write a complete paragraph in response to each. And here I'm looking for a complete thought where you introduce the idea, you put into context the passage and the question, and you answer the question clearly and draw a kind of conclusion or pull out your main point at the end of the paragraph. Okay, it's not an essay, but a short, complete paragraph. But think about structure, that you've got an idea and that you're unfolding it. Each paragraph also should have evidence backing up your claims. So that could be a quote with a page reference or a paraphrase with a page reference. But I need to see in each of the 8 paragraphs a citation providing support or evidence for your claim or context. Do not use outside sources for the midterm. That is fine for your papers, but for the midterm, you're just going to look at the ethical life, selections from the ethical life, which is the anthology edited by Schaefer-Landau, but with many different authors. And then there are chapters from The Fundamentals of Ethics, written by Schaefer-Landau, Russ Schaefer-Landau. So the 2 books for our course, those are the sources that you are required to read in order to write the exam. Each of the 8 questions is worth the same, so a total of 20 points. So each question is worth 2.5 points. Now, there are 2 sections to the exam, and you have to complete both of them, but that means you have to write 4 paragraphs for each section. So choose 4 questions from section A and 4 questions from section B. Section A focuses on specific passages from specific articles in the ethical life, and there are 7 of them. Again, you're choosing 4. The first one points you to page 67 of Susan Wolf's essay on meaning and happiness, and it gives you a quote from page 67. A preference theory does not seem accurately to reflect the status of a meaningful life, or that a meaningful life has for most of us. That's her claim. So your task here, and this is similar to the other questions, what does she mean when she says that? In your own words, what is she saying? So put it into context, explain her point. Why does she say it? What are her reasons? And how does this claim that she makes here toward the end of her essay, how does it fit into the argument as a whole? Okay, so you need to read the whole essay and then focus in on this passage and say something meaningful and interesting about it that is rooted in the text. Okay, and answer the question. What does she mean? What are her reasons? How does it fit into the argument? That's one question. Again, you choose 4 from this section. I point to a passage from the Mary Midgley article on moral isolationism, and she argues that it would lay down a general ban on moral reasoning. She says that on page 199. So again, similarly to the first question, what does she mean by this? How does she support that claim? What conclusion is she drawing from it? What conclusion does Midgley draw from that claim? She goes on to draw some conclusions. So I want to see that you can identify the implications that she draws out from this claim that moral isolationism would make moral reasoning impossible or impermissible. Okay, so that's the first 2. The third points to a passage from Enoch. Enoch's essay on moral objectivity, moral objectivism, why I am a moral objectivist, and you are too. So that one of the quizzes was tracking the argument from Enoch's essay. He says that the moral status of racism, for example, is response independent. What does he mean by that? Excuse me. And look at one of the three tests that he examines for response independence. How does the test work? What does it show? And what conclusion does he draw from that test? Again, a complete paragraph would be sufficient to answer that question. Then I have a passage from Plato's Euthyphro, where Socrates is raising a question about piety. And Euthyphro, he's trying to question Euthyphro's assumption that what he is doing in prosecuting his father is pious, but by going at a question about what piety consists in and whether it makes sense to suppose, as Euthyphro does, that piety can just be defined as whatever the gods love. Okay, so that's a passage from page 80 in the Plato reading from the Ethical Life. This week we read two pieces about utilitarianism, one by Mill. So I give you a passage from Mill's Utilitarianism on page 99. And we talked about that's what we're thinking about this week. Those who object to utilitarianism sometimes argue that it holds us to very high standards. But sometimes people will object to utilitarianism by saying that it holds us to very low standards. And so Mill has some things to say about that criticism. But here he's looking at a different criticism. It cannot always be charged with representing it, that is utilitarianism, in a discreditable light. Okay, what is the objection that he's considering in this paragraph? Okay, it's not the worry that utilitarianism lowers our standards. It's a different kind of worry. And how does Mill respond to that objection? Okay, on page 99. We looked at the Singer essay on global or world poverty, the solution to world poverty, and the case of Bob and his Bugatti, and his choice between saving his car and saving a child. What's the point that he's making with that example? How does he support that point? What conclusion does Singer draw from the claim that we seem to lack a sound basis for drawing a clear line between Bob's situation and that of any reader of this article with $200 to spare who does not donate it to an overseas aid agency? Okay. Think about the context in which Singer says that. What's the point he's making? How does he support that point? What conclusion does he draw from it? Okay. And then finally, from section A, there's a question about the Broom essay on the public and private morality of climate change. The quiz for this week, quiz number 4, asks you to answer some questions about the Singer essay on global poverty and the Broom essay. So these two questions from the midterm. Quiz 4 will help you think about those two essays. Okay, moving to section B. So once you have chosen 4 questions from section A and written 4 paragraphs in this section, then you move to section B and look at chapters from the fundamentals of ethics. You can do it in reverse order, but make sure you number your paragraphs appropriately. So you can use this document. You'll have a docx file. You can use this document to write your exam. You can, or you can create your own document. It doesn't have to be written inside this document. But if you create your own document, make sure to number the questions appropriately. So if you're answering number 8, you should write number 8 next to it, even if that's not the 8th paragraph you're writing. It should be numbered according to the numbering system on this document. Okay, so here I just give you chapter references. So in chapter 1, that is the chapter in which Schaefer-Landau discusses the attractions of the theory of hedonism, a theory of intrinsic value, a theory of value. So what is one of the main attractions of hedonism according to Schaefer-Landau? All of these questions are asking you to think about this in relation to what Schaefer-Landau argues. So you need to make reference to what he says with a quotation or a paraphrase and a page reference. So according to Schaefer-Landau, what is one of the main attractions of hedonism? Does that give you a conclusive, like a good reason to be a hedonist? Does he convince you? Or does the hedonist convince you? Notice that Schaefer-Landau himself is not a hedonist. He is presenting the hedonist's view, but he's not a hedonist. But do you think that the argument in chapter 1 gives you a conclusive reason? Why or why not? Explain your reasoning. Okay, so again, we can go all the way down to question 15. What is the problem of contradiction for cultural relativism? Okay, question 15 goes all the way to chapter 19 of the Fundamentals of Ethics and the topic of cultural relativism. Okay, there's a problem that Schaefer-Landau identifies on page 324. Here I do give you a page reference. The problem of contradiction. Cultural relativism seems to contradict itself. Why or how? Is there a way of solving the problem by imagining ideal observers who set the ultimate standard of morality? Does that solve the problem of contradiction that cultural relativism faces? Why or why not? That's the very last question. In between, we look at a question from chapter 2 on the importance of autonomy as a kind of criticism of hedonism. Hedonism doesn't seem to be really able to accommodate or explain the value of autonomy or freedom. Question 3 looks at the difference between a subjective and an objective account of welfare, or thinking about that distinction, and looks at a particular argument, the motivation argument, which seems to threaten objective theories of well-being. So what is the reasoning behind that argument? What conclusion would you draw? Here I'm asking you to construct an example of your own to illustrate the difference between objective and subjective theories of welfare. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to be able to go through all of these as carefully as I just did, but you need to now read the rest of the exam and decide which of these questions you're going to answer. Again, you choose 8 out of 15, so 4 from each section. The last thing I'm going to say is just to take your time. Don't leave it to the last minute. Okay, it's due on Sunday, March 31st. Today is Wednesday, March 20th, so you have about 11 days. So make sure to space it out. Maybe spend one day working on section A and work through those 4 paragraphs, and another day working on section B, or maybe spend 4 days on it. Okay, you have some time. I want to hear your own voice, so this should be written in your own voice, your own words, your own interpretation of what you're reading, and make sure to answer the question clearly, right? If it asks you to construct an example of your own, give an example. If it asks you to explain the reasoning, explain the reasoning. And each paragraph should contain a quotation and a page reference, or a paraphrase and a page reference, so I know that you're in the text and responding to the text. Make sure to provide evidence for what you say. This is a chance for you to go back and do the reading, and focusing on particular essays that you find interesting. Write about the chapters from the Fundamentals of Ethics or the essays from the Ethical Life that you have something to say about. Skip the ones that you don't have anything to say about or that you didn't understand. And just do your best. I want to see that you're grappling with the questions, grappling with the text, trying to think things through and draw out a little mini conclusion in each paragraph. Make one central point. Anyway, each paragraph should have one focused, clear point that you're making that responds to the question. Okay, so that's the midterm assignment, and I will be sending this video along with the document in an email, and I will be posting this on the announcements, the video and the document with the due date, Sunday, March 31st. I will also be creating a folder, a Turnitin folder on D2L where you can turn it in. Okay, so that's not ready yet, but it will be. Please reach out to me if you have any questions about the midterm. We can talk about it in office hours. I'm happy to talk about it in detail with you one-on-one. So that's all for now. Okay, take care.